You did not choose your mindset. Nobody does, you caught it. The way you catch a cold without knowing it happened, without consenting to it, without any moment where you said, "Yes, I want to believe this about money for the rest of my life." It just happened. In the house you grew up in, at the dinner table. In the silences between adults who were scared about money but did not know how to say so. In the words that were repeated so often they stopped sounding like opinions and started sounding like facts. We are not the kind of people who get ahead. Money does not grow on trees. Rich people are just lucky. What do you think we are, made of money? You heard those sentences, maybe not exactly those sentences, but something like them. And your developing brain, which was designed to absorb the beliefs of the people around you as a survival mechanism, took them in, filed them away, built a financial reality around them, and has been operating from that reality ever since. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And today I want to show you exactly how this happened and, more importantly, what it takes to interrupt it. Because the poverty mindset is not permanent, it is not genetic, it is not destiny. It is a transmission, and transmissions can be stopped. Let me start with the science of how beliefs spread between people. In the late 1990s, neuroscientist Giacomo Rizzolatti discovered something that changed the understanding of the human brain forever. He discovered mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are brain cells that fire not only when you perform an action, but when you observe someone else performing that action. In other words, your brain literally mirrors the mental states of the people around you. Not metaphorically, neurologically. When you watch someone experience fear, your brain activates the same neural patterns as if you were experiencing that fear yourself. When you watch someone feel shame, your nervous system responds as if the shame were your own. And when you grow up surrounded by people who have a deeply anxious, defeated, scarcity-driven relationship with money, your mirror neurons absorb that relationship as if it were your direct experience, as if you had lived every moment of their financial fear yourself. This is why financial beliefs pass so efficiently through families. Not because of genetics, not because poverty is inevitable for certain groups of people, but because the human brain is specifically designed to absorb the emotional reality of the people it is closest to. And in childhood, when the brain is most plastic, most open, most hungry for information about how the world works, the absorption is total. The beliefs of the adults around you do not feel like their beliefs. They feel like the truth. Let me be specific about what the poverty mindset actually is. Because it is not simply the belief that you do not have enough money. It is a cluster of deeply held assumptions about how the world works, about what is possible, about who gets to have what, that shapes every financial perception and decision a person makes. The first assumption is that resources are fundamentally scarce. That there is not enough to go around, that someone else's gain is your loss. That the financial world is a zero-sum game in which the only question is who gets left behind. This assumption feels like realism to the people who hold it. It feels like they are simply seeing the world as it is. But it is not the world as it is. It is the world as their nervous system learned to perceive it, filtered through years of genuine scarcity that taught the brain to see limitation even where it does not exist. The second assumption is that effort and outcome are not reliably connected. That working hard does not necessarily lead to getting ahead. That the game is rigged, that circumstances, luck, and who you know matter far more than anything you do. Again, this assumption is not entirely without basis. The game is genuinely unfair in many ways. But there is a critical difference between seeing systemic obstacles clearly and concluding that personal agency is meaningless. One is accurate perception, the other is learned helplessness. And learned helplessness, the deep conviction that your actions do not change your outcomes, is one of the most financially destructive beliefs a person can carry. Because if nothing you do matters, why do anything? Why save? Why invest? Why plan? Why resist the pull of immediate spending in favor of future security, when the future feels equally uncertain regardless of what you do? The third assumption is the most painful one, the assumption that people like you do not get to have the things you most want. Not because of anything specific, not because of a single failure or obstacle, but because of a deep, wordless sense that certain levels of financial security, freedom, and comfort belong to a different category of person. A category you were not born into and never will be. This assumption lives beneath conscious thought. Most people who carry it would deny it if you asked them directly. But watch their behavior at the moments when financial opportunity arrives. Watch how quickly they find a reason it will not work. Watch how efficiently they minimize their own potential, and you will see the assumption operating with quiet, devastating precision. These three assumptions, scarcity, disconnected effort, and unworthiness, form the psychological architecture of the poverty mindset. And they were not built by failure, they were built by absorption. By the mirror neuron transmission of the financial fear and defeat of the people who raised you. By a childhood nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, learning the rules of the world from the people who seem to know them best. The tragedy is that the people who transmitted these beliefs were not wrong about their own experience. They were not lying, they were passing on the most accurate map they had of a world that had genuinely been hard for them. The problem is that a map drawn from one person's painful experience in one specific time and place is not an accurate map of every person's possible future. And living by that map means navigating your future with someone else's limitations as your guide. That is what the poverty mindset does. It makes you live inside someone else's ceiling. And call it reality. So how do you break free from a mindset that feels like reality? How do you question beliefs that do not present themselves as beliefs, that present themselves as just the way things are? The first step is the most important one, and the most uncomfortable. You have to be willing to consider that the world you see through your financial lens is not the only world. That there are people know smarter than you, no more deserving than you, who see the same external reality and draw completely different conclusions. Who see an economic challenge and think, where is the opportunity here? Who see a financial setback and think, what does this teach me? Who feel fear around money because everyone does and act anyway. Not because they are fearless, because their relationship with fear is different. Because somewhere in their history, through a mentor and experience, an environment that modeled it, they learned that fear is not a stop sign. It is a signal, and signals carry information, but they do not have to control behavior. This difference between fear as a stop sign and fear as a signal is one of the most significant psychological distinctions between people who change their financial trajectory and people who do not. And it is learnable, not easily, not quickly, but genuinely verifiably learnable. Now I want to talk about something that does not get enough attention in conversations about mindset. The role of your current environment in maintaining the old programming. Because here is something the neuroscience makes very clear. The brain does not update its beliefs in response to information alone. It updates in response to experience, specifically repeated experience. Specifically, repeated experience in a consistent environment. Which means that if you are still fully immersed in the same environment that installed the poverty mindset, if the people around you still speak the same financial language, hold the same assumptions, reinforce the same limitations, changing your mindset from inside that environment is like trying to dry off while standing in the rain. Possible technically, but working against every force in your immediate world. This is not about abandoning the people you love. It is not about pretending where you came from does not exist. It is about intentionally, gradually expanding the environments you expose yourself to. The conversations you participate in, the voices you listen to regularly. The communities, even online, where a different financial reality is normalized. Where people who grew up with nothing talk openly about building something. Where the language around money is not fear and scarcity and impossibility, but strategy and patience, and the quiet confidence of people who decided to see themselves differently and then did the work to back it up. Exposure to those environments gives your mirror neurons new material, new emotional templates, new evidence about what is possible for someone who started where you started. And over time, with enough consistent exposure, the brain begins to update. Not all at once, not dramatically, but the assumptions start to loosen. The certainty that this is just how it is begins to soften into. Maybe it does not have to be, and maybe is where everything begins. Let me give you 3 practices that work at the level where the poverty mindset actually lives. Not at the level of thought, at the level of the nervous system. The first practice is called the assumption audit. Once a week, take 10 minutes and write down every financial assumption you operated from that week. Not what you consciously believe, what your behavior revealed you actually believe. If you avoided looking at your account, what does that reveal about your assumption of what you would find? If you talked yourself out of an opportunity, what assumption about yourself made that feel reasonable? If you spent money impulsively, What assumption about the future made saving feel pointless? Write the assumptions down, do not judge them. Then, beside each one, write this question: is this a fact about the world, or is this a belief I inherited from someone else's experience? That question, asked honestly and repeatedly, begins to create space between you and the programming. Space is agency, and agency is where change lives. The second practice is environmental expansion. Identify one new environment per month, one community, one channel, one group. One conversation where people who started with less are talking honestly about building more. Not gurus, not people selling courses, real people. People whose stories carry the weight of actual struggle and the credibility of actual progress. Immerse yourself in that environment for 30 days. Listen more than you speak. Let your mirror neurons do their work. Let your nervous system absorb a different emotional template for what is possible. And notice what shifts, not in your bank account yet, but in the quiet internal conversation you have with yourself about money. That conversation is the seed of everything that follows. The third practice is the daily proof. Every day, do one thing, one small, concrete financial thing that is inconsistent with the poverty mindset. Not something dramatic, not something that requires a complete life overhaul. Something small. Look at your account balance and stay present with it for 60 seconds without reacting. Transfer $5 to savings. Research one financial concept you have always avoided understanding. Ask one question about money that you have always been too ashamed to ask. Each of these small acts is a piece of evidence, evidence that you are not who the poverty mindset says you are. Evidence that you can engage with financial reality without being destroyed by it. Evidence that the rules you inherited are not the only rules. And evidence, accumulated daily over weeks and months, is what changes the nervous system. Not inspiration, not motivation, evidence. Here is what I want you to take from everything we covered today. The poverty mindset you are carrying was not created by you. It was transmitted to you by people who were themselves carrying something they received from the people before them. A chain of fear and limitation passed forward through time, not out of malice. Not out of a desire to hold you back, but because no one in the chain ever had the tools to break it. You have those tools now. Understanding is a tool, awareness is a tool. The practices I gave you are tools. And the decision made quietly, privately, in the part of you that knows the truth to be the person who breaks the chain, that decision is the most powerful tool of all. You do not have to have it all figured out. You do not have to feel ready. You do not have to be free of fear or doubt or the pull of old patterns. You just have to take the next step, and then the one after that. The chain breaks one link at a time, and it starts with you right now. If this video reached something real in you, if it named the transmission you have been carrying without knowing, comment the word free below. Not because it is a trend, but because naming the intention makes it real. Makes it a commitment to yourself and no one else. Hit the like button as an act of agreement with yourself that you are taking this seriously. And subscribe, because this is what we do here. We go deeper than the surface. We have the honest conversations about money and psychology that actually change lives. The poverty mindset ends where understanding begins, and it began today, right here. With you.